And so I think people are really waking up to this idea that you don't need permission to be yourself. You can just show up as yourself, and you can be, multidimensional and show those dimensions to people and not have to hide to people please, to make people, to make yourself bite-sized so that people can digest you, like just be the loud over the top or the quiet and kept your, whatever feels right for you. There are going to be people that attach to that or are attracted to that. I tell people a lot that one of my best friends, she talks to me about how she's felt like she's too much her whole life. And I have worked so hard to never tell somebody that they're too much, because they aren't too much.
But yeah, no, you sound good. You look good. Everything looks good. So I think we're good to go. So, yeah, I remember talking to you, man, because I remember your tattoos. I was like, I really like I love, like, tattoos always, I guess, catch my eye because I like tattoos. Do they have a meaning? Is there a story behind them?
Well, I mean, I have like, I don't know, 50 to 60. So
Okay.
some of them have stories. All of them have stories. Not necessarily all of them have meaning. I think after, I don't know, 20, I was like, they just really look cool. I want them, like I have them going up my neck, and I have them like on my back, legs. Like I pretty much, well, I still have a ways to go until I'm fully covered, but yeah,
Okay.
it's my ultimate goal is to just be fully covered and everything. I've got like my hands done and ribs and, all that good stuff. So,
Well, I know you say there's maybe not a story to it, but I think it is meaningful. I mean, it means something, I think I think there's a message behind it.
I think, yeah. So, some of them for sure. A lot of them I got while I was traveling. So, like the ultimate souvenir, most of my leg tattoos are from different countries, which I really like. But some of them, no, they're not necessarily meaningful. Like it's hard to show on camera, but like I have this one, it's a giraffe, and he's like got two bow ties on him. And, I just thought it would be funny, like where would a giraffe wear a bow tie? And so some of them are like that. Some of them are meaningful. This is the song that my parents sang to me when I was a kid, like going to sleep and stuff. So yeah, some of them have meaning. Some of them I just thought were funny and interesting, and yeah.
Okay. I had somebody told me that a couple days ago that they got like tattoos as a souvenir of places that they visited. And I don't know. I just like I mean I like tattoos, but I don't know if I trust people that like like one guy did my entire sleeve, and the other one over here, this was split up. But I don't know, man. I don't know if I trust people enough to just get like, I don't want to say random, but at different locations,
Yeah, I completely understand. Almost all mine are from different locations. I had one when I was living in California. I had one tattoo artist, and he did a lot of my work. And so, but he's pretty much the only one that I have like more tattoos done by.
Right.
I got really lucky traveling. I found all of my artwork is just really well done. I haven't really needed touch-ups on most things. And I haven't paid more than $500 for a tattoo. So I'm
Oh,
like
wow.
really happy with that. I have some big pieces. So.
I know as much ink as you have, man, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because my sleeve was like a process, man. It was just like,
Yeah.
I mean, he did a really good job, but it was just like, I was like, Jesus, man, at this rate, I can't see how people are completely covered.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, that was pretty good.
Yeah, all of mine, I've had only one that took 2 sessions. And that was because she actually had to go. Like I was in Italy, and she didn't speak any English, and I didn't speak any Italian. And I
Oh,
had
wow.
this crazy idea like come to me, and it's like a mermaid with butterfly wings sitting on a crescent moon, and the moon turns into a wave and her hair turns into clouds. Like it's a very abstract idea. And I had to explain this. I was like, how do I even explain this in English, let alone in a language that I don't speak?
Right.
And she nailed it. We like worked through Google Translate and everything, and it was great. And it's like the front part of my thigh, and yeah, I loved it. But she did a fantastic job. I think when getting travel tattoos, it's important to look for line work and shading quality, um, because, for the most part, I wasn't getting super complex, super detailed types of things, nothing like
Right.
hyper realistic or anything like that. And so it allowed me to have a little bit more um, safety and trust with the people that I was working with, because if I
Hmm.
could look at their Instagram and see their line work and look at the healed pictures of tattoos, then I could pretty well gauge how it was going to go.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I don't know, man, that's interesting. Do you have any color? Or is it all
I
just
do have one color tattoo. I did not like color. I had nightmares about like having, a American traditional leg sleeve, like
mm,
waking up one day and just having it and being like, my aesthetic, oh no. Um, and last year I actually had this idea for a rainbow tattoo, and so I have it like right on my sternum,
mhm,
and it's just 7 flowers in rainbow colors. It's like this big, but I was like, okay, so it's in the center of my body, it's all the colors, and so for me it made my brain was okay with it.
mhm.
But I don't know if I would get any more color tattoos. Maybe like little tiny things here and there, but they would, for me, it would have to be like a symmetrical thing. I couldn't just do
Right.
it on one side. Even though my tattoos aren't symmetrical, like the the color would have to be.
Yeah, yeah, no, I got you. Have you ever seen somebody do that? I think it's like I don't know if it's white, but it's like a white colored ink or like somebody told me one time, the same person that was telling me about the travel, I think she was saying that like some sort of white ink, if the light hits it a certain way, it looks like crazy. Like you can't really tell from a distance, but once you get up to the person, like it really looks crazy. And I've never seen that before.
Yeah. I have a friend, and she has a full white ink tattoo because
Okay.
she didn't like the starkness of black ink on her skin. And you can't see it until you look up close, but it almost looks like a really intricate birthmark. It's
Hmm.
super cool.
I'm uh I'm curious, like, so a tattoo. I don't know if you've ever seen those pictures of like what it looks like if the ink. I guess it's maybe AI or something, but if the ink is like removed, it's essentially like a scar.
Hmm.
Like, I wonder if there's a way to do a tattoo like that with no ink and just like have that. I guess the skin tone tattoo, like it would be like a scar basically, but it would be like the
Yeah.
skin tone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That would be kind of
Yeah.
crazy looking.
I've seen that or something like that in terms of like people maybe trying to cover something up. The
Mm,
only issue with those is if you get tanned at all or if your skin tone changes at all,
right.
then it like you can see it a lot more because the ink's not going to change with it. But yeah, I've seen those. They're really cool too.
I don't know, man. So the tanning thing, I'm kind of like stuck between that because I'm a really big believer in sunlight. I think sunlight is very important, but at the same time, I want to take care of my tattoos. So I don't know. I've heard people say that that's a myth. I've heard people say that the sun doesn't. I mean, I guess excessive sun will, but like the sunlight that you need for health, I don't think that's enough to damage it.
No, I don't think so. I personally hate the feeling of sunscreen all over. Like
Yeah,
I have ADHD and sensory things are difficult for me, but putting sunscreen over all of my tattoos every day just to go
yeah,
outside is never something that's going to happen. Not possible for me. So, yeah, I don't think that it's that. I think going and tanning, you know, every single day and not wearing any sunscreen and stuff like that, like if I'm going to go be out in the sun all day
hmm,
and tan and everything, then of course sunscreen is a must, but daily practice, definitely not, just for my face.
yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, the sun really will, in excessive amounts, it really will age your skin.
Mhm.
Uh, but but so about you, if you want to, before we get too far into the conversation here, if you want to tell us who you are and just kind of preface the conversation, what you do, anything you want to share about yourself, and then we'll dive in.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I have my name's Jazzie. I've spent the last 2 years, like I said, traveling and just exploring. I moved to Barcelona last year and love it. It's perfect for me. And I work doing uh strategy, execution, ongoing support, like high level executive assistant type of things for coaches and entrepreneurs.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
So immediately, this is the first thing that I thought of. So like all the traveling that you've done, what have you found that people think about the US that maybe we're not aware of in the US unless we do travel? Because I'm curious. I've heard it because I can imagine what the answer is going to be, and you don't have to get into too much detail if you don't want to. But I'm just curious what people think about us.
I think the most frequent asked question that I get about the US is like, are you guys okay? Like, how's it
Yeah.
what's going on? Um and also people ask a lot about like guns and just
Hmm.
is it like everywhere? And then I think the other main question is just like the food.
Yep.
Um like the cereal aisle is something that a lot of
Hmm.
people can't quite grasp in the US. Like in Barcelona, for instance, the stores have like, I don't know, a couple of cereals, but it's not an aisle for sure.
Hmm.
And like the Oreo
So
cookie aisle, like in different supermarkets, there's just an aisle full of different flavors of Oreo cookies, stuff like that. People are really like
so what
interested
you're
by.
saying is the boxed up colored dyed toxic poison is just a US thing is basically what you're
It's
saying that we
pretty much just the US thing. Yeah, actually
okay.
coming to Europe, a lot of people who have a gluten intolerance,
Hmm. Yep.
in the US, they can eat bread and gluten and
I've
pasta and stuff in the
I've
US
heard
or
that.
in
Yeah.
Europe because it's not processed as much.
Yeah. No, I've heard that. I've heard if you go to Italy and you eat pasta, it's completely different from like the
Yeah.
US.
Yeah.
Um, so I asked somebody that one time or something similar to that one time, and her response, it's kind of funny, but it's actually not funny at all. She was like, the person asked her, she was like, is everybody just overweight there? Is everybody just like fat there? And it's just like, that's kind of a depressing thing, man, because like the countries that you visit, and I know there's a lot of them, but are people generally, in good health? Because we in the US, we want to think that we have for some, I don't know, I think this is changing, but for a long time there we thought we had a superior health system, and like, our health was like, I guess maybe top tier. I think we have access to certain things. I think the medical system needs a lot of attention in the US, but I think comparatively, like to other countries, as far as like general health, I was talking to somebody the other day, and we were talking about a statistic that said about approximately 40% of American children are considered obese. So that's like crazy, you know. I mean, I'm just curious, like, because I think it might be like these other countries and stuff. They don't have, like you were talking about, the cereals and stuff. If they do have it, it's probably not like half the ingredients of what we have. Um,
Yeah, I think it's not even just the processed stuff because there's a lot of process or not like processed, but there's like um the what are they called? Like Cocoa Puffs, they have those
oh
here
yeah.
too, like it's not like it's just pristinely everything is great, but they do have a lot more regulations and stuff and like even the red like marinara sauce that you get at the store is
Hmm.
it's like tomatoes and basil and oil and like that's it, like it's like 5 ingredients max. And so that even, in all of those everyday things that you're eating, even if you're trying to stay away from the sugar and the highly processed stuff, you are finding that it's like in all of the food.
Hmm.
And I think if you're going to talk about health, there's so many different things woven into that, like the healthcare system, for instance, like way, way too expensive. Like my healthcare here costs me $65 a month, and
Oh
I
wow.
don't have to pay for anything. I don't have any copays, any like nothing. It's just 000 deductibles.
Hmm.
And it's top notch. I could literally go to the doctor today, and have my pick of whichever doctor I want. Um, and so there's that aspect. I think health in the US is very much tied to how much you make. Like
Hmm.
you have food deserts, um you have the healthcare system, you have all these different things, even trying to eat healthy. Whole Foods is, like you can go in there and spend your entire paycheck in one
Oh yeah.
sitting, in one
Mm-hmm.
grocery like errand. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's a lot that needs to be addressed in the US. I think the health is a big one. Um, but there's so many different factors feeding into the health in the US.
Mm. Yeah, no, for sure. I think the concern that I've heard a lot of people talk about with that is like, I guess if it's like there's a universal healthcare system or universal basic income or something like that, I think the concern is like motivation of the people to really excel in some of those areas. Like, I think that, for example, if we're talking about doctors, if all doctors get paid the same and they're not paid based on how well they do their job, I mean, I think that's the concern. But I think also too that there's a lot that needs to be addressed because, like you said, I mean, if the average person can't really afford health care, that's an issue. That's a big problem. And I've heard people. I was listening to a guy. I think he was on Joe Rogan's podcast. He was talking about, or maybe it was Andrew Huberman, but he was talking about like an HSA, a health savings account type thing. And he was like, if you did it that way, if that was the basis of your medical system, it would completely transform the medical system versus where it was like the insurance companies who probably make extreme profit off of, this. It would be basically you had like a family had their system, their healthcare system. It was essentially a savings account and it would roll over and like you could take money from one family member's account to the other. It sounded like a complex system, but it was like it also made a lot more sense than kind of currently what we're doing. I'll look up that guy's information and put the reference to that podcast in the description. But yeah, so what got you into like coaching with entrepreneurs and business owners? That's
Yeah,
what you said, right?
so yeah, I work with
Okay.
coaches. I
Oh,
don't
okay.
necessarily call myself a coach. I,
Okay.
help them in lots of different ways, but I dove into coaching a little bit, but don't feel like it's something that's aligned with me right now. Um, but I started as a virtual assistant 3 years ago and started working with my mentor at the time, and she was, just doing everything on her own, solopreneur, and really needed some help. And she was like, "I think it needs to be you." And I was like, "I've never done anything like this before. I've been working, like when I was living in California, I was working 3 different retail jobs, Starbucks, Lululemon, all these different things. I was a kickboxing instructor and nanny, but basically like I was working from 4 in the morning until 9 at night to
Hmm.
try and make, enough money to sustain everything. Um, and so I had never done any administrative work at all. And my dad taught a lot of entrepreneurial stuff and business stuff as a kid. So it wasn't like I was so new to the entrepreneurial side of things, but I was basically starting a business, which I had never done, doing something that I had never done.
Hmm.
Um, and it was just a lot of Googling at that point, just Googling, how do you do this? What do you do here? Researching things for her. And then I realized after about 6 months of working with her that I could turn this into a business. And so I started to tell people, I'm starting a business helping people. Let me know if you know anyone who needs help. And lots of people need help. So it kind of blew up really quickly. And I had like 9 clients within 2 months of launching the business and was doing, you know, every different kind of thing and working for realtors, working as a personal assistant or a business assistant, and just kind of like doing whatever I could to learn. And then realized that I had just created another grind for myself of working 16 hours a day and being exhausted and not having time for things that I cared about. So I cut back on my clients and started traveling. And I originally only planned to do 2 months of travel, and then I moved, and then it just kind of 2 more months, and then 3 months, and then 2 months. And then I realized the next year in 2023 that I really wanted to do an entire trip around the world for a year. And so I did 20 countries across 5 continents in I think it was like 11-ish months, but it was, whole whirlwind, lots of different things that was happening, but I was still running the business while I was doing all of that.
Okay. There's a lot going on there.
Yeah.
So when you said you work with coaches. So like, what's something that you do with those guys or girls?
Yeah. So I mainly start with website and what I like the basis of what I do with the coaches is helping them align what they do with how they're presenting themselves. So, most of the people that I work with, their website does not reflect who they are.
Hmm.
The colors are dull and they have a bright energy, or the copy is very like cookie cutter and it's not matching their tone of voice and stuff like that. So, really helping their clients connect with them from their website first. And then we work through the offers that they have. And, a lot of people fall into this trap of shoulds. Oh, I'm a coach. I should do group coaching, but I hate group coaching. Okay, so why are you doing group coaching? Like, that sounds just not like something for you.
Mm-hmm.
And so really looking at their offerings and what do they bring that is so unique, and how do we hone that in and figure out exactly what they want to be doing so that they're having fun and their clients are connecting with them. And sometimes it's giving them more offerings, sometimes it's streamlining their offerings. And then I also work with them just like in an ongoing support kind of way. We talk about the strategies behind all the different things that we're doing and workshop and brainstorm all the different ways we can go about this, what feels good to them. Sometimes it does involve a little bit of coaching along the, let's go in this direction, or let's add this here, or, a lot of the thing that I really enjoy about my job is that I work so closely with these coaches and with these entrepreneurs. And so the level of trust is really high. They trust
Mm-hmm.
me a lot and they come to me. They get to be that person for everybody else. But when they come to me, they get to just kind of like let go, and I can hold the space for them when they're going through something really hard, or, when they're having the big success, all of that good stuff. They have a place that they can come where I can hold them, and we can strategize and like have that structure,
Mm-hmm.
because they typically do that for all of their clients.
Okay. So you do a lot with these people.
Yeah.
It sounds like, if I'm understanding correctly, it sounds like there's an emphasis on, like, you sort of emphasize like the website, the marketing, maybe the online marketing. Maybe there's like it sounds like there's some strategy involved.
Yeah.
And then
I don't necessarily do marketing
okay,
in terms of like on social media or
right.
posting or getting them clients. That is not something that I'm interested in doing, but I work on the like, what would you market,
Mm-hmm.
So the website, the actual person, giving them things that they can market, that they can take to Instagram and push out, or they can bring to LinkedIn, that they can push out, put in an email blast, all that stuff. I do help with some content writing and stuff like that, but I don't take on the marketing aspect of things.
Okay. Yeah, I think man, like, so I started a coaching business like last year. Like, I specifically work with entrepreneurs and business owners, athletes, on the mindset. And I did not realize before I did this that there are like, man, there's no shortage of coaches on the internet. I didn't realize that was, and I'll tell you like how a lot of people do this is they use a podcast as either marketing or lead generation. And I have mixed opinions on that. I've expressed that before on the podcast, but like I started the podcast first. A lot of people, I think, do their coaching business first and then start a podcast to help the coaching business. And so, but I started the podcast first because I just wanted to talk to people like in different spaces and learn things from different people. But yeah, they're like, man, there's so many, like there's literally for anything that you can think of, any probably scenario, there's probably a coach for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's a market that has blown up in the last couple of years for sure. And it's really interesting because there are coaches who have been coaching for 5, 10, 15 years. And then there's like this new wave of coaches who kind of say, I have lived experience, I'm going to coach. And that is the most important distinction, I think, behind finding a coach that really knows what they're doing versus the lived experience. And that was the feeling that I was getting with when I started coaching, was like I was sharing my lived experience, but I wasn't a coach. And so that's why I pulled back.
Right.
And it's cool to see people coming into this space, because while there's a lot of coaches, there's a lot of people who need coaching. If you think about any other job, there's a lot of therapists, there's a lot of doctors, there's a coffee shop on every single block in Barcelona, and they're all still thriving. So it's not necessarily about, like, oh, there's so many, everybody is a coach. It's more about what can you offer to people in the I'm trying to find the word, but like the appropriate way, with the, like, you wouldn't trust a therapist just because they have lived experience. Like they need a little bit of social proof to show that they know what they're doing, that they have, what it takes to help you. And I think the difference between a coach and, say, a mentor is that social proof, the credentials, certain things like that. A mentor is going to be somebody who's sharing their personal experience to help you and guide you in different things. And so, yeah, seeing that difference is really important now that we're seeing such a high influx of coaches coming into the market.
Yeah. You mentioned sort of lived experience, and I think that's a good way to put it, because I think that's something that a lot of coaches kind of do, maybe sort of use to offer this credit. You talk about this credibility. I've noticed that, like, so in my space, I wouldn't say compete, because a lot of times we can work in complementary ways, but I know a lot of people in the space, like that I'm in, it's technically business coaching, but a lot of those guys are going to focus on like the numbers, teams of like 10 plus 20, 20 plus people. But like, so what I'm getting at is, like, there's such a, being specific on what you do is really such a, it's important, because like there's a coach for everything. There's a coach in any space that you can think of, but when you know exactly what it is that you're going to narrow down on and what you're going to focus on, I think that really sort of gets through all the weeds of it. You know what I mean? Because you can focus on what you think you can help people with. And I think a big part of for me is like, is that personal experience, because I have a business outside of this that I've had for 11 years, and I've learned a lot through that business. And so that's why I say specifically with entrepreneurs and business owners, salespeople or athletes or people in that space, because I consider myself to some degree one of those in different areas of my life. But I think that's important for a person to understand that, to understand like where, because you kind of have to, you really kind of want to stay in your lane. You know what I mean? Because I would not feel comfortable. Like a lot of people that I meet that are like potential coaching clients, we're not a good fit for each other because their scenarios like so different, and also too, one thing that I do love about the podcast is help me create an online network. So if I can't help somebody, it's very likely that I've met somebody either through the podcast or in that space that can help them. But yeah, you mentioned about like this sort of looking at the market and seeing all these coaches. I don't really, and this is, I've said this about other businesses too. Like you look like landscaping, mobile detailing. Those are markets that people would say are heavily saturated. But I don't think that's a good way to look at it. That should not deter you from starting a business in that space, because if it is saturated, if there's a lot of people doing it, that means there's a big demand for it. You just have to figure out a way to set yourself apart from the people who are already doing it, and then you can probably be successful at it. But I think that does sort of turn a lot of people away, because they think it's going to be hard to get business in that space when there's already so many people doing it. But again, like you said, there's a demand for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest key to what you're saying is to, like, and this is what I work with my coaches so much on, but the alignment aspect of who you are, um it's what I've been focusing on throughout all of my travels and through my business and all of that. But really, what do I like to do and what do I want? And how do I want to set up my business, and really focusing on that shift from the scarcity mindset into abundance. But instead of having like these ideas of, oh, I'm not going to be able to find the people if I'm doing it this way, or if I get into this market, then like I'm going to fail. Instead of looking at it from that lens, it's like, I'm going to get into this market and be exactly who I am, and the people who like me are going to come to me.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that is the biggest lesson I've learned in the last year, is that people who want to work with me want to work with me so badly. I just had a call yesterday with somebody who has been wanting to work with me since July of last year, and said, was speaking to her mentor, and he's like, what do you need to get started in your business? Like, really, what do you need? And she's like, I need Jazzie. And he's like, okay, get me a proposal. Like, potentially I may be able to invest in this. And so, like, the people that want to work with me, that like my energy, are going to want to work with me regardless. If they don't want to work with me, they're going to find somebody else that's a better fit. But realistically, at least in my business, I need 10 people who want to work with me, who have a need to work with me, who have money to work with me, like all of the things that I need. I only need 10 people for
Mm-hmm.
that. That's not very much, like
Right.
there are 10 people in the world that want my business, that want to work with me specifically.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm finding them, I'm attracting them. I just redid my website, and it is my energy to a T. It talks about my tattoos. It talks about my ADHD. It talks about traveling and living in Spain. It has fun and silly photos on it. But it's still very professional. And so some people aren't going to like that. They're going to say, no, I want somebody who's very like I do things, I think a lot in color. And so I want somebody who's like a navy blue, who's very structured, who's very professional. That's amazing. That's not me. If you want me, I'm pink and bright yellow and bubbly and fun and sparkly, and I will still get everything done that you need to get done.
Yeah. I think we're sort of all craving that authenticity, because I
Yeah.
think especially like I know with coaches, you mentioned credibility earlier, like you are essentially marketing yourself, because you are the service, like who you are, your energy, your knowledge, your expertise, like you are the service. But I think just in general in the business world, I think we're all, and I mean, even outside of the business world, I think we're all sort of craving that authenticity, because for a long time, like politicians and people on TV and news, like you only saw like one side of a person. But then long form podcasts came out and completely changed that. Like now you have people who go on some of the biggest podcasts in the world, and they talk for several hours at a time, and you see like different sides of these people. And I think it helps you relate more, because you see that these people are like just real people. But then it's also too that I think we as people, like I think everybody's sort of craving that sort of because I don't know, it's weird when you see like a business person who's trying to represent a company, and obviously they're trying to like keep everything put together, and there's a presentation there. But at the same time, like that there's a part of this person that's missing that you don't really see at that initial, like on the initial outside. You see what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I don't know. I think we're just sort of all craving that. And I think I honestly think social media has a lot to do with that, because I think social media has completely changed the way that our relationships are with people. I mean, we see like usually we see the best sides of a person on social media, the best parts of their lives, and it's just like, I don't know, man, it's crazy. It's almost like we feel like we're in this, Truman Show type thing, of like, this is obviously not real. Like, where are the real people at? And then you have conversations with people, and then you have deep conversations. You get into things, and I don't know. It's just enlightening, I guess, and it's also refreshing too.
Yeah.
Like I just imagine, if you can imagine like an aquarium, like a fish aquarium or something like that, or what is it? That's an aquarium, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So a fish aquarium, and there's like the fish, but there's like a fake environment. You know what I mean? And there's like that's clearly not real. It's kind of sad for the fish, to be honest. I don't really support zoos or anything like that, but it's like a fake environment. You know what I mean? It's not like natural to them. I just kind of feel like that's where we're at with this social media thing. It's like it's not real. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, I have so much, like, I literally was taking notes as you were talking, because I have so much that I love to talk about on this topic. I think people are tired of this narrative that we've been sold for so long, that there's one path to life and that we need to follow the rules to be successful, and like, we don't need that. We don't need these rules. Like, some things have kept us safe, in the past, whatever, have kept people in power, and people not in power, not in power. We But we are really seeing a lot of people kind of waking up and realizing that we don't need to follow the rules. We don't need to have this path, this white picket fence narrative that we're sold. We don't need to have that. We can make different paths for ourselves. I agree that social media, we see a lot of the good sides, and I have definitely fallen victim to the comparison and seeing, like, different things about relationships, and these things that I yearned for so long, and building ideas based off of those 7-second snippets that you see on social media. I do think that it can be damaging, but on the flip side, there is a ton of freedom within social media. It really does allow us to break the rules and connect in community in ways that we haven't seen before, and to rise up. Like, the reason they care about controlling social media, and I mean, like, on a government level, is because it's dangerous. And so I think people are really waking up to this idea that you don't need permission to be yourself. You can just show up as yourself, and you can be, multidimensional, and show those dimensions to people, and not have to hide to people please, to make yourself bite sized so that people can digest you, like, just be the loud, over the top, or the quiet and kept to yourself. Whatever feels right for you, there are going to be people that attach to that, or are attracted to that. I tell people a lot that one of my best friends, she talks to me about how she's felt like she's too much her whole life. And I'm I have worked so hard to never tell somebody that they're too much, because they aren't too much. They're too much for my needs. But that's not on them. That's just me. Okay, so then I'm going to make the decision to find people who are more matched to my frequency, but it's not on them. They have a different frequency that they're going to find other people who are going to be a match for that. And really looking at it from that lens, instead of putting it on somebody else to be, they're too much, you can just take ownership and say, they're not the person for me. No judgment, nothing about you, nothing about me, just not the person for me. And moving that way, and building that authenticity, and the genuine authenticity, really, I think that's the direction that we're moving in. And people, I don't know. I think it's going to change the world.
No, yeah, for sure. I think I don't know, man. I think offering a watered down version of yourself to somebody, like, I don't think anybody is ever really truly happy like that. I think that if you offer a watered down version of yourself because this it's not right for this person or whatever it is, I think you devalue what it is that you have to bring to the world, which is like something that's unique. And I think there's a lot of talk about purpose on this podcast, and I think one of the reasons that we have sort of this, it's like this longing, like a lot of us feel like something's missing, like we're supposed to be, something's missing. There's something that we're supposed to be doing or supposed to, pursue or whatever. And I think a big piece of that for a lot of us is bringing that unique part of ourselves to the world, because you're right. You might be too much or too little or not enough or not right for somebody, but that's okay, because the world is a very big place. First of all, the world is a very, very big place. And nobody's saying that you have to like fit into anything or offer anything of value to the world, because you are yourself and that is the value. But I don't know. I just, man, because I've talked to a lot of people, and I think you mentioned sort of breaking away from cycles. I think a lot of people are still in this belief of like, you know, pursuing a certain career because their parents did it and their grandparents did it or whatever. And it's just like a lot of people in that space are not happy doing that, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't know, to do a thing for 50 or 60 years or however long, 40 years, however long it is a person works, to do something for that long, like, I feel like it needs to be something that's really aligned with who you are.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. I like what you said about the purpose, and I think that we often attach purpose to what we do and say that, like, oh, I help people by doing XYZ and that's my purpose. But one of the things that I've really been working on is this idea that purpose doesn't come from what you do. Purpose just comes from your energy. Like, it's not about searching for a purpose on the earth. It's about, like, I bring my energy, and that is my specific energy is exactly what this world needs right
hmm,
now. Like, and that energy, bringing that energy to whatever I do, and not in a way of like, oh, I have to be happy all the time and I have to be helping all the time or anything, but just me being authentically sad, angry, happy, excited, all of the feelings that come up, and just authentically myself. That's, at least it's my purpose. And I feel like that attaching purpose to who we are instead of what we do makes it a lot easier to find it, because we just have to go within.
hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. This is crazy, man, because you've traveled a lot and you've been kind of all over the place. So, did you lived in California? Is that kind of where you grew up at?
Yeah.
Did you ever live anywhere else in the U.S.?
No, just in California. I spent a month in Baltimore while I was traveling. But
Okay.
otherwise, no, just in California.
Okay. So what I was getting at was, I don't know if people are aware of like a lot of the things they believe about who they are or what they should do in life or whatever. I don't think a lot of people realize that that's really, a lot of that is based on where they were, like where they grew up and where they live currently. Because I tell people a lot, man, and I know a lot of people know this. If you can get out of your hometown and especially get out of the culture that you're in, like, you'll learn so much about different people. That's one of the reasons that one of the things I really love about this podcast, because I've talked to people from all over the earth, literally all over the world, and I just don't think we're aware of like how much we believe or that we think we believe really comes from our environment. Like the U.S., it's sad to say, but the U.S. is split up between, like, there's like different ideologies in different portions of the U.S., and like where you live a lot of times really sort of directs what you think about the world and about culture. But it's your responsibility to sort of break out of that and see things for yourself. But I don't know. I think that it really, but like you mentioned earlier about cycles, sort of this cyclic belief throughout generations, and that really bothers me, because there's a lot that's changed in the world over the past 50 years, except the sort of matrix that we live in about get this job and do this career and you're supposed to like do XYZ. Whoever came up with like supposed to, like, where did that even come from? You know what I mean? Like, who says you're supposed to pursue this route? And I think that's like anytime I meet a person who travels or has done a lot of traveling, they're usually not always, but usually a very open-minded person. And I think it takes that to really sort of, I don't know, maybe open your mind to things that you're not aware of. But like I said, I think a lot of people are really constricted about like their culture and their immediate sort of space, like where they're at.
Yeah, absolutely. I learned from one of my clients a couple of years ago. She had this term called, like, she would say, "Stop shooting on yourself."
Hmm.
And it made it really easy for me to recognize, like, oh, I'm shooting on myself right now. And I think traveling really helps, and not just vacationing, but traveling.
Right.
It really helps to realize that there's no specific way,
Hmm.
that you have to travel or that you have to do things. And the shoulds come out, for me at least, they came out really clear. I was in Japan, I remember, and I was going through a really, really hard time. I had been full-time traveling for just over a year, and I was in the first like 4 months of 2023. I was traveling like nonstop, every 3 days, moving to a different city, backpacking across Asia while running my business. So it was really busy time. And I was also dealing with a lot of heavy personal things. Um, and I remember this one day when I was in Japan, and I was like, I'm in Japan. I should like go out and explore and whatever. And I could not get out of bed. I was just having such a hard day. Um, and I realized this trip is just mine. I'm here alone. If I sat in this room, like, yeah, it would be a little bit of a bummer to go all the way to Japan and not leave the room, but there's no thing that I should be doing. And
Hmm.
it's the same when I was traveling. I'm not a big food person. Food has always been really difficult for me with ADHD, but then also I have something called ARFID, which just makes food really, really hard.
Hmm.
And everybody's favorite thing to tell a traveler is, "Oh, you're there. You should try this. You have to try this." And it's some obscure food that they tried and they were like, "Yeah, it tastes like chicken, whatever." And for me that's like, "No, I'm just not going to do that." Um I'm not going to spend majority of my budget on food. I'm going to eat butter noodles in my Airbnb or my hotel and be fine. That's good for me. Yes, I'll go out, I'll try different foods and cuisines that I want to, but it is not something that I place on myself that I should be doing or I have to or I'm supposed to do that. Because really when you're saying that, it's saying that you shoulds basically validate this idea that there is one path to take.
Hmm.
And if you are not on that path, you should be back on that path. But I really feel I hear what you're saying about the 50 years, we haven't seen a lot of change, but I feel like actually within the last 5-10 years, we're seeing a ton of change. We're seeing it become more and more common that people are taking the different paths, that people are saying, yeah, you can make money online and you can travel if you want to, and you aren't locked into this 9 to 5 corporate nightmare that we have been sold.
This episode is brought to you by Excel Coaching Academy. Hey guys, I'm really excited to let you know that I started a mindset coaching business. So what I want to do with this business is I want to help entrepreneurs, business owners, salespeople, leaders, and fitness enthusiasts or athletes develop the right mindset to increase revenue, improve business or performance, and overcome the challenges needed to become the best version of themselves. You can get more information about this by emailing info@excelcoaching.academy. I said that hasn't been much change in 50 years, but you said you thought there was actually a lot of change, and then
Yeah.
after that, you kind of froze up on me.
Okay, cool. So, yes, in the last 50 years, there hasn't been a lot of change, but recently, in the last 5-10 years, there has been a lot of change. And we're really seeing people opening up and taking different paths. Making money online is an option now. And you have the ability, the option to travel, to make money in different ways. You're not locked into this 9 to 5 idea that we had been sold for so long. And the 9 to 5 isn't even as secure as it used to be. And
Mm.
so I think people are really waking up to this idea that there are different paths, it's it's possible to take them. Whereas 50 years ago, it wasn't. 50 years ago, what I do was not even remotely a thought.
Yeah. No, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I don't know. I think the internet really has opened up opportunities. I just think we need to be, because I think it's easy to hear when I talk about social media that I usually talk about it in a negative light, but it can also be a really positive thing. It's just that we obviously have to, uh, like social media, the AI, all these things are essentially new, or at least newer for us. So we don't know the long term effects, so we just
Yeah.
have to be careful. I read a headline. I didn't read the article, but I read a headline earlier that people were starting to show symptoms of addiction to like chat GPT and that kind of stuff. So we just have to be, we have to be careful of that. And yeah, I don't know. Don't get me started on the AI thing, but yeah, man, I think like the, I don't know. It just really bothers me. It's like really depressing to me to think about. And fortunately, this was not part of my experience. I never had this, like we talk about, like pursuing a path because your parents say this, or trying to make your parents proud. Like that was never a thing for me, and I'm very grateful for that. But I do have compassion for people who are in that space, because I know a lot of people have that. This like the generational, you know, businesses or generational careers or whatever, and I don't know, but I do think that we all have something to contribute to the world, and we only find that through sort of allowing ourselves to explore ourselves, explore the world around us. Um, I wanted to talk to you about ADHD. Is that so? Like, what do you help people in that space, or do you just talk openly about that, or what's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of my clients have ADHD, which I really like because in true ADHD fashion, I don't like doing the same thing every day. And so when I work
Mm,
for a client who has 6 different projects going on, I'm basically working for 6 different clients in one, and I really enjoy that. So I do help people. I don't exclusively help people with ADHD, but I do work with a lot of people with ADHD. I am very open about pretty much everything in my life. I share a lot of different things about the like abuse that I've endured and the trauma that I've had and the struggles that I've been through and all of that stuff. And ADHD, I just feel like it's such a part of me, such a huge part of me. And I couldn't I couldn't show up authentically without touching on those different things. It's being neurodivergent is actually like my brain is different, completely different structurally than a neurotypical person. Like there's just different things in there. And so it impacts in a lot of different ways. Um and I think the more I realized that I had ADHD because some of my friends talked to me about it, they had it or have it, and I started watching more on social media and learning more from people and realizing I'm I relate to 100% of what you're saying. Like maybe there's something behind this, and then taking different tests and things, and all of them saying like you should get checked by a person professionally about this, and I'm like okay, like I've got it, cool. um but for me, the realization that I have ADHD, and I say this a lot, but it was like realizing that I'm not a weird horse. I'm just a normal zebra. Like it's just like the the shame that I've put on myself for so long, the feeling like I couldn't do these things, the all of this stuff, I realized it wasn't mine. I was comparing myself to a person with different abilities, completely different abilities. Um, and so like thinking that I'm lazy when I have executive dysfunction and like my brain's not communicating with my body, and just sitting there shaming myself. Oh, you're just such a piece of crap. You can't get up. Like, what's going on? Why can't you do this? That wasn't helping me. And so when I realized I had ADHD, it was like, okay, you're in executive dysfunction. Like, let's give yourself some time and recognize that this is where you're at. Recognize your energy levels. What can you do tomorrow instead of today? And like, it comes from a much more compassionate place rather than a like, you're a piece of crap kind of place. And so I speak about ADHD because, I don't know if somebody's listening and they're like, oh, I kind of have that too, or I kind of act that same way. And maybe I look into it, and then they can be kinder to themselves.
Yeah, so I think this is like a really good example of, I think there's some things that we have a label for in society, and we just we use them freely when really there are people who really struggle with these things. I think ADHD is one. OCD is also another one. Like, people just use the word freely, like they have OCD, but like people who actually have these conditions, there's like I think there's a lot of weight that they don't realize that goes on in these things. And
Yeah.
so I don't know. I feel like language is important, and I think we need to be really aware of what we like. Anything that comes after I am, or anything like I have, I am, whatever. Those things are very important uh, for ourselves, number one, but also two. I think sometimes it minimizes other people's experience if we say that sort of in a free, like I have OCD or whatever because I did something that was repetitive or whatever. But it's like people really experience that. That's a real thing for people.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of times people associate ADHD with just distracted. So somebody, gets distracted and they're like, "Oh, you're so ADHD." And like, I have one of my best friends, um somebody told her that she's like ADHD, and I'm like, she is not ADHD. Like, she is the most high functioning person I've ever met in my life. Like, there's not even a realm of possibility that she has ADHD. She's distracted right now, yeah, for sure, but she doesn't have ADHD. And I think what you said about language, it's so important. And using labels, everything that we've talked about today has a good and a bad side. Social media, technology, all of these things, you can see both sides of them. And it's the same with labels. You can see that when other people label you, it's not good. It feels crappy, it's stereotypical, it's just not fun. But for me, labeling myself has allowed me to have the language to identify what I'm going through. Having, like I touched a bit about, like ARFID, and like that's avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, but like realizing that I have that, and that food is just a struggle for me, and that I'm not like just a problem and annoying and frustrating for everybody that I've been around, but I actually have something to work, like, that's going on in my head, and
Right.
it feels really validating. And same with ADHD. And I've also been realizing that I think I might actually have ADHD, which is autism and ADHD, and what that means and stuff like that. All of these things just help us to have the language to express ourselves more. Like,
Mm.
I'm also bisexual, and having that language and realizing that that's a part of my identity, like all of these different things help me to like weave the tapestry that is me, that is the specific, like, all of them are just threads within the tapestry that is me. And and without the threads, I can't make the tapestry, no matter how hard I try. And so I think labels can be really, really powerful when we place them on ourselves, um when we hold the power, and also knowing that they can change and they can evolve. It's not set in stone unless we like choose it to be. It's not just like, oh, I am this, I'm forever this. All of these things could be fluid. You could realize that you have ADHD and then do more research, and oh, maybe actually it's more autism that I'm feeling, or maybe it's a combination of both. Like it's it's a constant journey to search for the things that feel like us, and we're evolving every day, so those things are going to evolve with us.
I'm uh I'm curious how you became so self-aware. Like you're I feel like you're a very self-aware person. And I
Yeah,
think I mean I've stressed the importance of that on this podcast before, but I feel like you're very self-aware.
thank you. Yeah, I started to go to therapy when I was 11 because my school had a counselor in middle school, and I was like, you're telling me that instead of going to class, like being in math class, I can just go talk to somebody about all the things that I've been dealing with? That sounds like way more fun. And so, a little 11-year-old me would get like a pass saying, "Oh, you have like an appointment, in 30 minutes, whatever." And everybody would be like, "Ooh, what would you do?" Whatever. And I'm like, "I'm going to therapy class. Like, see you later." Um so I think that definitely had a lot to do with it, because I pretty much self-imposed went to therapy from 11 to 22 weekly.
Mm,
And so I was just processing a lot of different things in my head and all of that stuff, from a really young age. And I also just am fascinated by this stuff. I think it's so interesting the more that you can learn. I love taking all the tests and getting more language to use to describe myself. I'm a very spiritual person, so I love all the astrology, numerology, just things that, to me, it's just more languages that you can use to describe yourself and to comfort yourself in those times of, I have a identity crisis. I don't know, it feels like once a month. And so having those things to really ground me in,
mm,
it just helps me to work better and to flow more. And so yeah, I think it was the therapy from a young age, but honestly, it's just fun to learn more about yourself and to explore everything.
mm. You mentioned an identity crisis, and man, that's a very intimidating thing. But then you mentioned or being grounded too, which I think is like I think that if you don't know who you are, or you don't have that relationship with yourself, I think there's a lot of things that are on the outside world that can test you, that may decide for you. And I think that's of course not the way to do it. But I think that if you're living any life that has any sort of um, that's any sort of positive fulfillment, or anything to achieve, or anything that's going to make you like fulfilled in the long term, like there's going to be challenges that come along that, like a business, a career, a goal, whatever it is. And I think just being like knowing who you are is extremely important,
Yeah.
because if like I think an identity crisis, and like again, this is one of those I'm kind of being a hypocrite, because I'm saying that after I just said like labels are important, but there are people who really experience that. You know what I mean? Like they had that real thing. And like, cause I've talked to coaches and stuff on the podcast, and they specifically work with people like with identity crisis. And it's almost always, per what they say, it's almost always a person who gets to a certain level in their career, a certain level of success or whatever. They build this thing, they get all this stuff, or this title or whatever it is. And they don't know who they are. Like they're not, they don't have that connection with themselves. And my question is always, well, how does a person even get to that point without first having that relationship with themselves? But it's like you have to just really like think about, if you were in a situation and you built this life for yourself, and you did all this, you had this career, you went to school, whatever it was, and you built this life for yourself. But then 35, 45, 50, 50 years old, something, or, somewhere around there, you feel like whatever it is that you are doing, whoever you are, like you don't even know yourself. You know what I mean? Like you had this, your identity falls apart. Um, and man, that's just terrifying, because if you have nobody else, at the end of the day, you have yourself, and you're with yourself 24 hours a day. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think talking about the self awareness and the identity aspect of it, I think that's incredibly important, because
Yeah.
I've always said that I feel like self awareness can alleviate, if not eliminate, a lot of problems that we have.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think we have been taught to attach our identity to things that can very frequently change. If you attach your identity to the fact that you're a lawyer and then one day you get fired, then, oh no, identity crisis, you know?
Mm. Yep.
We even attach it to being a good mother or friend or wife or whatever, you know? And then it's like, well, what happened? What's your definition of good wife or good mother? For me, at least, it would be like the old idea that I was sold was selfless. So what happens when
Mm.
I put myself first ever? Identity crisis. And so it's really interesting to look at what are the building blocks that create our identity, and how do we go back to center when those things change. And and I say identity crisis because I often feel kind of just a bit disconnected. And when I'm talking about all of this stuff, you brought up a little bit earlier about like the challenges and everything. Like traveling was really hard. Owning the business, running the business is really hard. Coming back to myself and grounding myself, it's all really hard. It was just that I was already living a really hard life before in California. I was unfulfilled, unhappy, working nonstop. I already did hard things. I can still do hard things. It just because I feel happier in my day-to-day life does not mean that my life isn't still hard. There's still a lot of difficulties that I come up against. Um and so with the identity stuff, I've really been trying to get to a place of my identity is attached to my energy, and I know what that feels like. And I know what that feels like in different emotions, and I know how I react to things in different ways, and that like it just feels like me, instead of attaching these outside things, be, even to the point of I attached good friend to my identity, and then it was like, well, what happens when I'm not actively being there for a person? What happens for being thoughtful? I'm a very thoughtful person. What happens when I'm not being thoughtful because I don't have enough, or like I'm not interacting with a person this week or something like that? Then the identity crisis feeling kind of starts to kick in. And so it was like, how do I remove all these outside things and just feel within myself? What do I feel like? And how can I come back to that person whenever I'm feeling just kind of disorganized, disassociated, whatever in my head. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, see, that's what I'm saying. Like, there's a lot of internal work going on there, and I think a lot of
Yeah.
people, I think a lot of us, like, we think outside versus thinking inside. And
Yeah.
there's not much you can do about what's going on outside. Like, people are going to be who they are. The world is like, I mean, I think everybody has a part in the world, and I've said this before. I think the collective is essentially just everybody doing their individual part. But a lot of people don't think internally the way you do.
Yeah.
As you were saying that, I didn't realize the time. I'm not going to keep you all day. We'll be respectful of your time. Do you have social media, website, or anything you want to share?
Yeah, I have my website. Go check it out, justjazzie.com. And I just redid it. So if you want to give me any feedback or say hi or anything like that, I would just love it. And then, yeah, I'm on Instagram and LinkedIn and whatnot. So you can find me there
Okay.
too and connect with me in that way too.
Okay. And so one thing that I ask everybody before we close, and you've kind of been all over the place, so I'm curious to hear what you have to say about this. If you could share one of the most important lessons you've ever learned, it can be from your personal life if you're comfortable sharing it, or something from your business or your work. What do you think is one of the most important lessons you've ever learned?
Yeah. I think it's honestly the theme of what we've been talking about the whole time, but alignment
Hmm.
and figuring out who you are, just going as deep as you can and want to go, taking small steps to get there instead of seeing it as this huge thing, really taking it just one step further and one step further. It can lead you to a lot of amazing things. And so that, coupled with the search for alignment, the search for what feels best for you, what feels fun and exciting, and just, the direction that you actually want to go in, instead of being bogged down by all of the different thoughts that other people have. I think that is really the key. And so it's been the key for me, for business, for personal life, for romantic life, for friendships. Like, it has changed everything in my life once I started to just be more of myself and put myself out there, and and find out who I am and what I want and what I feel like and what I need, and how to be, my own best friend. I think that that's really the thing that changed me the most.
Yeah, I love that. I love that because I think when we see people who are like doing all kinds of crazy things, we think that it's like there's energy or passion or whatever there, but I think all that comes from being in alignment with whatever you think, whatever you think whoever you think you are, or your mission or your identity, like being in alignment with that, when all those things sort of kind of line up together, I think incredible things happen. So, but Jazzie, it's been great. Been great talking to you. I'm gonna let you get out of here. If you can hang out for just a second, I'll explain the upload to you. But been a good conversation with you today.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, listen, guys, I really appreciate you tuning in today. If you enjoyed this podcast, if you found it useful or beneficial, you can subscribe, follow, interact, and see more content at Pure Wisdom Podcast. This is all social medias: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Rumble, Spotify, Amazon Music, and Google and Apple Podcasts. Again, we appreciate you tuning in, and we'll see you next time.